set higher standards. And so when you set higher standards, there's a couple ways that a couple notes I put in here is actively study those whose successes, they've had success outside of your own ministry, whether it's in your church or whether it's another church or whatever. And you do have to be careful. We did a podcast a long time ago. The grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
So you do gotta. There's a balance, in all of this. But if you study those people that you look up to, and it could even be within your own church, it could even be within your own ministry, where you see somebody that, let's say they're really good with praying kids through. They have a talent or a gift. Is studying that and saying, okay, what. And talking to them, what do you do? What is it? How is it that you have this skill? And reaching, beyond ourselves and saying, okay, well, let's set a higher standard for ourselves. And that, if in our previous point, I forgot to mention the self-audit your performance. When you set a higher standard for yourself or for your own ministry, when you set that higher standard, along with that, hand in hand with that, is self-auditing. Like looking at yourself, looking at your ministry, and saying, "Okay, are we everything that we should be?" There's somebody that I know that I don't know if they would ever admit it, but they look up to me.
Okay.
And so I have people that admit it, that they look up to me too. But there's this person that I think that they look up to me. And the reason I think that, and I think would be too proudful to say that they do, but they expect so much out of me. Because like they'll come to visit or something, and they'll be like surprised that I'm not doing something that I wish I was,
Yeah.
But they're surprised that I'm not, like, let's just a hypothetical example, because I'm trying to be really vague here. Like, they're surprised I'm not writing songs or something. And I, kind of like, well, man, I should be. I should be doing that. And so I use that as an example to, in essence, in kind of one way, we should, excuse me, sorry, sick voice. In essence, we should have the highest standard for ourselves.
Yes.
And so, instead of trying to live up to other people's standards, really, we should have a high standard for ourselves.
Can I say it like this, and hopefully it comes out right? We need to be our own worst critic.
Yes, that's perfect.
And we need to be hard on ourselves, but like there's also a balance in that too. We don't need to beat ourselves up so much that we don't want to, that we feel like, what's the point? But there's a very fine line balance, and I'm speaking from a little bit of experience on this topic. But we do got to be our own self-critic to challenge ourselves.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Because ultimately, in the end, we're going to be us and our ministry is going to be what's going to benefit from that challenging, from that self-studying of ourselves. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and if when we're looking to set those standards, there's a couple things. One is, I think of kids. If we, we've talked about bad behavior, for example. If you accept bad behavior, or if you lower the bar, we did one called Raise the Bar. You lower the bar, and then expectations go down. So when we set the standard or we raise the bar, we bring everybody up to a certain level of expectation. And so if we can be on top of it ourselves, if we can have a super high standard, then when we turn around and we're interacting with the kids in our ministry, we can be pulling them up to that standard. We can be drawing them, to a higher standard and a level of excellence, so that when you come in, it's kind of like this. You have the ministry side or the leadership side, which is kind of what we're talking about today, and then you have the church side, the congregation side, or the kids in Sunday school. I remember years ago, this is a long time ago, I went to visit a church. I think it was in California with my parents, and It was a very large church. It was much bigger than our church. I don't know how big it was, but it was really big. And their music was awesome. And I remember the way that they sang, and the congregation was singing, as you would expect. But it was like they were singing the parts, like the alto, tenor.
Okay. Wow.
So, I mean, it was just amazing and incredible. But just the other night here at our church, we sang a song that the choir used to sing. And, oh, man, now I can't remember what it is.
I think I remember I know what you're talking about.
Do you know the title of it?
I don't remember, but I do remember the situation that you're talking about.
Because I did parts with our singers.
Because it was parts were done. And so, like, you could almost hear it. Like, I didn't even recognize it until you just mentioned, but I know... I wish I could remember what song, but I do remember what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it used to be a choir song, and they would go through, and there's like this, it's a bridge or whatever, and sopranos do a part, altos do a part, tenors do a part, and then they cut the music and everybody comes in. Well, we have, 9 praise singers, I think, and so it was like three of them, or whatever, doing it. So it wasn't a choir, but it was, and I had a flashback when we did that. I had a flashback of when I was a kid and visited that church. And I thought, this is what I saw, basically, is this kind of thing. And, we're doing it. We've come to that standard,
Yeah.
So, saying all of that, like the ministry side and the church side, is when we, as leaders, raise the standard for ourselves, for our ministry, and we are operating at a high level and high performance, then the kids and the church naturally follow. And so when somebody comes in to visit, what my vision is a kid visits Sunday school, and not only are all the adults and staff on point and perfectly executing their job and creating a relationship, but even the kids that come all of the time, they are raised to a certain standard that's world class. So the kids are like, I felt so welcome there. It felt so good to go there, because not just the adults were nice to me, but the kids were nice to me. Yeah. And the kids were praying, and the kids were worshiping, So that's, man, that's world class, right?
Yeah, that is definitely world class.
And then the other note I had on there too is don't just look at the biggest ministries, but look at values and impact. And so it can be tempting to say, and I'm not saying, don't look at those, but it can be tempting to look at, a large children's ministry, a large Sunday school or something, and like, man, they got it going on, let's emulate them. And maybe there are some things you can take, takeaways, but I would also say that there's maybe ministries that aren't just aren't super large or whatever, but they have it going on in their quality.
Yeah, exactly. You got to, especially with smaller churches, you got to be able to take, like, you can't put, like, even for example, like us, can't necessarily staff the amount of people that you need to put on exactly what we do. You got to also be able to do what fits your situation and fits your need. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, rarely there's not a lot of churches that do the staffing like we do.
Yeah.
And we're not a huge church, but it's the way our Sunday school operates. And we're blessed to have that. So